Tansei, bonjour, Anin, Dave McLeod, Indigenous, and welcome. We're coming to you from beautiful Treaty 1 territory. Specifically, we're in Winnipeg, Manitoba, at the Broadway Community Center for Community Connect, brought to you by Safe at Home Manitoba. And our guest in this program is Renée Lamoureux. She's an award-winning bilingual Metis performer who's been in the country music scene now for over 20 years. She was nominated in 2020 for a Juno for Best Adult Contemporary Album of the Year, and she took home Female Country Music Award at the Manitoba Country Music Awards in 2016. She's been nominated for various other awards, from the Western Canadian Music Awards to the Indigenous Music Awards, and we're thrilled she's joining us today. Renee, thank you so much for taking time to be here.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
A lot of artists have been dealing with the pandemic, and I know as artists, it's about connecting with people, other musicians, your audience, your fan base. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for everybody. I've found that I've been doing a lot of writing, even more than I was before, and I think that has to do with, being at home and like you said, not seeing people. So there's been a lot of Zoom sessions of co-writes with friends, and so that's been great. The creative juices are still flowing, and I think at this time, I'm inspired by what's going on. It is bringing some songwriting material. So yeah, it's been good in that sense.
And there's when I've talked to other musicians, there's a sense of when this pandemic is over, there's going to be such a need for live performances. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
I totally agree. I miss it for sure, and it's going to be great when we get back to it. And I feel like for me, I'm also nervous about it because it's I'm going to have to. You almost feel like you're going to start over or something. But yeah, I mean, we're all hoping for that day to come.
So we talked a little bit at the beginning about your nominations for country music. What are your thoughts on the state of country music? Because when you say country music to different people, it means different things. But country music is changed. I think it was in the 80s it really took on a nuance. In the 90s and the 2000s. It's not what it was 50, 60 years ago. But what are your thoughts on the state of country music today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my whole music career, when people would say, what's your genre? That was always a question that I didn't know how to answer. Because I feel like I've always been a little bit country, a little bit pop, a little folk. And so I think it's kind of we're at a time, I'm just thinking for my own music, that there is a lot of crossover. And I'm okay with that. So when people ask me what's the genre, I mean, I don't say I'm specifically country. It's just a mix, and I think you're hearing a lot of that.
There's a real pop flavor, I think, in today's.
Yeah, there is yeah, for sure.
And I've heard hip hop as well is being mixed in. So. Yeah. So again, the roots are storytelling and sharing those stories, and that's something you've talked about in a lot of your music. Is that you have a lot of messaging, and can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, well, I find a lot of times, I mean, I write about all kinds of stuff, but the music I end up really grasping to is, especially my last 2 albums released, have been more I don't know, motivationally driven, I guess. And it wasn't really on purpose, but when I would write those songs, those were the ones that spoke to me the most. And I feel like we're living in a time where people can use that kind of message, and so that's just what has been working for me, and I'm just kind of going with it. But I'm even seeing a bit of a turning point with this upcoming album that I'm writing about, and so I think it's you just kind of let your creativeness, whatever comes out at the time. And I know for me, in the last 5 years, it's been about being motivationally driven, I guess.
And some of our people watching this right now are going to be looking and remembering you being with Keith and Renee, and that was a big part of your life musically. You spent 15 years as a duo together, and you released was it 6 albums?
Yeah.
And so what was that like, moving away from being a duo and going solo? Because I remember seeing you as Keith and Renee, and then seeing you on stage going, wow, that must be that spotlight's just on her now. What's that like?
Yeah, it's a process. I think it still is, because we started that band. I was 20 years old, And really that's all I did for the 15 years, you know. We were almost like a marriage, really, like, you know, just touring everywhere together. And although part of me always wanted to release solo albums because it felt like there was another piece of me that I wanted to talk about, kind of thing. So there was an excitement there, but of course there was a fear because that's all I knew. And but I think it was a healthy thing to do, just to explore that new area that was like so afraid for me to go to. And yeah.
But vocally, I mean, and your songwriting are so strong.
No, thanks.
Did it give you an opportunity to use that voice you knew you had?
Well, yeah, because like with the Keith and Renee stuff, it was very much like so much like harmony driven. And so that was a lot of times that was my spot. Like our voices were, you know, harmonies and stuff. So this, yeah, definitely gives me an area where I can kind of play with my own voice, I guess. And so that was something new for me. And yeah, the writing, definitely I write songs that I would have never really worked for the Keith and Renee projects. So yeah.
Well, and then you moved on, especially some of your songwriting. I know there was an international songwriting competition. You submitted, you made the semifinals, and there was like 18,500 submissions, and you rose to be in the top categories. So what was that like for you? I mean, it was a while ago, but it must have been a signal that your songwriting was definitely getting attention.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I love how we get those little encouragements along the way, because for sure that was a really cool moment. And actually just the other day I was actually at Dollarama of all places, and there's a song playing and I'm like, why do I know this song? And I'm like, that's me. I was like, and so like you just have these moments as it's almost reminders, like because sometimes you do get like, you know, not doubts, but things like, well, maybe this is the last one. And then you get those moments where you're like, no, I still love making music, and I feel like these are signs telling me to keep doing it. And so, yeah.
And you certainly have. I mean, you've and this is the great thing. You've got a balance of being a songwriter and a performer, and you've been on the road with like Jann Arden and Dean Brody, well-known country stars in North America, and you're with the best of them. So what was that experience like when, you know, pre-COVID, of course, but doing the touring?
Yeah, they were both great tours. I really connected with like Jann Arden was such an amazing person, and how you see her like on TV, like she's so genuine, and I learned a lot from her. She had a lot of lessons, like, without knowing, but and probably because that was a longer tour than the Dean Brody one, so we were with her for quite a while.
What did you learn from Jann?
What did I learn from her?
Maybe just one or two
well,
examples.
I've said this story a few times, but that was the first time. So this is going back, oh boy, quite a while, 8 years maybe. And so we were playing a show, and after the show, it was one of our best shows, I thought. It was amazing. It was at the Jubilee in Calgary, so it was like
beautiful theater.
Yeah, like 3,000 people, sold out. And the next day, I get like a Google alert, and I clicked it because it said our name, and I clicked it, and it was like a bad review on us. And it was the first time that I had ever seen that before. And we're about to go on our next show, like and I saw this, and I was like, oh my God, and I just started crying. I'm like, whoa, this has never happened. And Jann right away came into the room. She, I guess, read it herself. And she just was like, I don't know, she just sat with me and said, you know what, you can never listen to that. You're always gonna get things like that. You just gotta keep doing it. And I just remember going like, I can't believe Jann Arden is giving me this, like, this pep talk. And it was really inspiring. And yeah, it was just like, just a review.
So Jann Arden gave you that advice, but obviously you rose from it. You've released several albums, and like you say, you've gotten radio play nationally throughout North America. So who else was encouraging you in your career? Because there's Jann Arden, and here in Winnipeg, who's supporting you?
I think there have been people all along the way. From when, I told my parents that I wanted to do music, and they supported me right away. And just as Dave, you're a supporter, and
Absolutely.
we have so many supports locally, and even I can think of there was a time I sort of lived in Toronto, and the producers there, and just being on tour, it's been a journey, and definitely my career has taken all kinds of brought me to all kinds of places I never thought I would even land, and there's been a lot of mentors for sure.
And our scene is so different in Winnipeg and Manitoba as opposed to different. I've talked to people who lived in New York, Toronto, Vancouver, Los Angeles, but what is the difference, do you think, that exists here in our city?
Well, I feel like every time I tour, I love touring and seeing the world, but I'm always excited to come back here. It really is home, and the people are down to earth, and the license plate that reads Friendly Manitoba. It's true. We're just down to earth people, and even you see that within the artists. We're always supporting one another, and I think we want to see each other succeed. So, I've never really lived in another city to know if maybe the artists there have that amongst themselves, but I definitely see it here in Manitoba.
You've played internationally, in Egypt, some countries in Africa, Kenya as well. What's that been like, taking music here and just going to other parts of the world?
Yeah, that was super cool. When I was in Kenya, this was back with Keith and Renee, we actually went there 2 summers in a row. And so the first summer we had a song called Wake Up. So we went and played, we were at a school, and there were about 300 kids, and we're 7 hours from Nairobi. So we're very rural, and we're playing for 300 kids, and they loved it. Then a whole year went by, and it's not like they had CDs or anything like that. And we went back another year to that same school, and I didn't realize we were playing for probably a lot of the same kids. And we started singing, and all of a sudden these 300 kids started chanting, "Wake up, wake up." They were requesting the song we had played last year, and I was like, how do they remember this? So that was just such a moment for me. It's music can reach so many people, no matter where you are in the world. That is such a way to connect to people.
And more recently, 2019, you traveled to Big Sound, and it's a huge festival in Australia, and you're representing Indigenous music with some other incredible groups. Tell us about that.
Well, that was such an honor to be a part of, and it was my first time in Australia, so that was amazing. And I was there with Twin Flames and Snotty Nose Reds Kids, and it was such an experience. We were there for about a week, and we had a bunch of showcases, but it was so great just to meet the Indigenous artists out there and to connect with them. That was kind of our first, I think that the first encounter together, and just making those connections and for us to work together in the future. And yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. The festival itself was pretty overwhelming. There was something like 200 artists performing, so it was a big thing, but it was great to be there.
And it was when you began music, you toured across Canada, you've toured all different parts of the world. Was that part of the goal, or was it
to tour?
To tour, or was it I just want to get a recording out on the radio, because
from when I started, you
yeah,
mean?
from when you started to where you are now, and all the experiences you have. How does that sit with you?
I always say my whole life has been a surprise, because I'm from a small town, Ile-des-Chênes, and I didn't go on a plane till I was 21, and I didn't think I was going to be leaving my small town. And so it's just I remember even the first time I flew to Toronto, I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Everything was I can't believe I get to do this. And so, yeah, growing up, I didn't grow up in a home where my parents were because I sang all my life, but it wasn't are you going to be a singer when you grow up? It was well, what school are you going to go to? And so I never thought you can actually make a living doing music. I thought I don't know, like it just wasn't something I considered. And so really Keith was a mentor in that sense, because when I met him, he opened my eyes to like, we could tour, we could do this, and I didn't even know there was a music business. I was so naive, like, and so that's really what began, I guess, my music career. I mean, I was always singing for the fun of it, but that's where it started.
Can you share maybe briefly about one point where you go, where you took that step and you go, I've arrived as an artist. I'm a real artist. Is there a moment that kind of stands out for you? There's probably so many of them. But
yeah. Well, the one thing that I've learned, like when I started, I remember it was always like, well, when we make it, you know, it's like when you make it. I now believe there's not really. I'm not saying there's no such thing as making it, but it was more like, there's like stepping stones along the way. That's how I've seen it. So there's been these like for me, like being nominated for the Junos last year, I was just like, is this really happening? You know, so that was another moment of like, oh my gosh.
And it was so great to see your face with all the other artists when I was scrolling through. I was like, wait a second, Renee's in here. It was so cool.
No, even me, I'm like, is this really happening?
We just have a little bit of time left, but I got to ask you about, you're working on a new album. It's your 10th album, and you're working with Murray Pulver.
Yeah.
What's that experience like?
Well, this is my 4th album with Murray, so I really enjoy working with Murray. And so yeah, this album, most of it has been created during COVID, so it's all pretty much been written during this time. And I feel like the songs, the messages kind of reflect that in a lot of ways. It's also like a time for me, like a new like self-discovery really, because I'm in my 40s now. And so it's like making music at this time is still exciting, and I'm still like honored that I have the opportunity to continue to do this. And so, yeah, the album, I'm pretty much looking at it as I'm releasing like singles, and so hoping to release the full length by fall.
And you have a single out right now entitled High and Low.
Yes.
What can you share about that single? And the title itself is, you know, it does seem to speak to the COVID pandemic we're going through right now.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with that. It's like the song is about being grounded really, and it's like when you have your 2 feet on the ground, like I say, like when you're grounded, it's when things can make most sense, I guess, and you have some good days and some bad days, but it's just finding that balance is what the song's about.
Well, that's the perfect segue, because coming up next, we're going to see Renée Lamoureux with Murray Pulver performing High and Low on Community Connect.
2, 3, 4.
I get caught up in the small things. It's so dumb. I'm good at overthinking my so-called flaws, but I'm the one who can make sense of who I am. I'm the one who can. I can go high and I can go low. I found the world's most beautiful, and I can go high and I can go low. I found the world's most beautiful, with 2 feet on the ground, with 2 feet on the ground. I'm not saying that it's easy. We've all got problems. I'm not trying to sound ignorant and state a solution, but I'm the one who can make change, 'cause anything's possible. I'm the one who can. I can go high and I can go low. I found the world's most beautiful, and I can go high to